Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin with special Hakaras HaTov to Torah Communications, to TorahAnytime.com for their magnificent platform of worldwide Torah in over 120 countries, and they do a very good job. I mean, we reach people all over the world, and equally so to Kol HaLashon in its pure global network. Many people world over don't want to have technology, and they have a phone, and they listen by the phone all over the world. The wonderful pioneering Torah Communications Network, our Zoomers, our subscribers, those of you here at the Agudas Yisrael Beis Zev, our flagship station, and those that are listening or viewing on mediums that I'm not even aware of, YouTube and other mediums, welcome. Tonight we have two sponsors. One came in mamish under the wire the last minute. We're sponsored anonymously, and I am a little bit derelict because this sponsorship came in last week, but I made a mistake. I thought it was for this week, and we're doing it this week. It's sponsored by a daughter with blessings to Hashem that her wonderful father, Shal Yecheskel ben Rachel, reached the milestone of his 80th birthday, and with her wishes that Hashem bless him together with her mother with many more healthy years to enjoy nachas from their many wonderful descendants. The last minute, a sponsorship came in from the UK. Yaakov Akiva Halprin sponsoring it. Ilui Nishmas Mordechai Weiss, father is Ada Shver on his 16th yahrzeit coming up, Chaf Aleph Elul. He had the distinction of raising a family, although he was a Holocaust survivor, and raised a beautiful family, and did so in Manchester. His neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden, and he should be a Melitz Yosher. And they also want to wish Mazel Tov to their wonderful children, Binyamin and Fredi Shar Yosher, for the birth of Sarah Charna. She should grow up to Ben Torah, Chuppah, and Maisim Tovim, and all kinds of wonderful things. So I want to start off the shir with a topic that I've spoken about in the past. It's very timely. 9/11 is very much on our mind. Already there's the highest state of alert in New York with bomb threats already for the anniversary of 9/11. So in the Teichacha, there's a famous pasuk, Yisa Hashem alecha goy merachok. Hashem will bring against you a nation from a distance, coming kasher yida hanesha, like the eagle sweeps. Now this pasuk came alive thousands of years ago. The Gemara in Sukkah in Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis refers us to the magnificent community in Alexandria of Mitzrayim. There was a magnificent Jewish community in Alexandria of Mitzrayim. This community started after the destruction of the first temple, when Gedaliah ben Achikim was assassinated. That's why we have right after Rosh Hashanah the fast of Tzom Gedaliah. So Yochanan ben Karach and surviving warriors fled to Mitzrayim. At that time, the community of Alexandria flourished. The community was magnificent. There was a basilica, a giant Beis Medrash, a Beis Knesses, to be exact, that sat kiflayim kiyotze Mitzrayim. Now, whether this is an exaggeration or not, I don't know. But literally, it means that it sat 1,200,000 people. Whether this is exaggeration or not, but it was a huge basilica, creating, housing, literally myriads of people, myriads, tens of thousands amongst tens of thousands. We're taught that there were flagmen, so that when the chazan ended the bracha, the flagmen raised the flags to let people know when to answer Amen. They kept track. That's the first flag. That's Magen Avram. That's the second flag. That's Mechayim Esim. That's how huge this was. And the entire community came to a sorry end. They were slaughtered to a man. Now, the Gemara tells us that they were all killed by a czar. Now, the girsa of the Gemara is that they were killed by Alexander the Great, by Alexander of Macedonia. But this is greatly debated if it was Alexander the Great. The Gra has a completely different girsa. He says it was a czar by the name of Tarquinos. The Abarbanel takes out Mokdan. It wasn't Alexander of Macedonia. It was different Alexander. So it is another girsa in the Yerushalmi in Sukkah, and it wasn't. But whatever it was, they were killed by a certain czar that came with a huge fleet and armada and wiped out the entire community. The tragic story is given to us in Esther Rabbah. If you want to look up in Esther Rabbah, it's in Psichta Gimel, in Esther Rabbah. It tells us that what led up to this Holocaust was that this czar, whoever it was, Alexander, Tarquinius, Trigonus, this czar had a child, a prince, on Tisha B'Av. And the empress noticed that the Jews fasted. Then the czar had a tragedy. Their daughter died during Hanukkah. And indeed, it's recorded in Esther Rabbah that there was a debate amongst the sages in Alexandria if they should light the menorah. Or would it be an affront to the royal house that's in mourning? But the decision was that they will light, and v'yavah yimanu ma'asher yavah. Let it come what it comes. We're going to do our tradition. The empress saw that every house had a menorah lit, and she told her husband, when we had a boy, the Jews fasted. Our daughter died, the Jews are celebrating. Wipe them out. A woman, a wife, has a very big influence on her husband, and the Tsar came with a huge, huge army, and the trip was supposed to take 10 days. And the Medrash relates, and the Gemara in Sukkah relates, that they got there in 1 day, or in 5 days. Now the Gemara says 5 days, but the Balaturim on this week's parasha says 1 day. So obviously, it's a question how big the miracle was. If he got there on 5 days, or he got there in 1 day. And when he came, he stormed into the huge basilica, and they were learning from the Torah. So the Tsar stopped them and said, I want you to read the verse that you read as soon as I came in. And would you know it, they were reading the verse from this week's Parsha. Yisa Hashem alecha goy merachak. Hashem will bring against you a nation from far, and he will come kasha yida hanesha. He will fly like an eagle. And the king looked in wonderment. That's exactly what happened. I came from a distance, and I had unusual swiftness. Instead of taking 10 days, it took 5 days or 1 day. It must be talking about me, and therefore he progressed to kill and slaughter Klal Yisrael, the community in Alexandria. Now the Balaturim, in his amazing way, they have to know that this terminology, Yideh HaNesher, is very unique. The word Yideh, if you're into linguistics, the word Yideh, like the eagle flies, the word Yideh is not mentioned in the entire Torah. The classic word for fly is Yo'uf, Yo'uf HaNesher, like an oath. This is the only place in the Torah that the word Yideh is used. The Balaturim, in his genius, says the gematria of Yideh HaNesher is exactly 575. Exactly. Which is exactly the gematria of Asara, 10 days. Asara is also 575. Because they flew the way of 10 days in 5 days or in 1 day. So this was indicated, this tragedy was indicated in this verse. Okay. Now, this alone would be an example of the prophecy of the Torah, except that we who live in post 9/11 age know that the tragedy of the Twin Towers took place on the week of Parshas Kisava. And then it once again became alive, this pasuk. Yisa Hashem alecha goy merachak. Hashem will bring against you a nation from a distance. Miktzei haaretz, from the other end of the land. Kasher Yideh HaNesher. And the enemy will come like an eagle flies. And what makes it again remarkable, and I said this during the year of 9/11, is, you know me, I look at words, I see things when I look at words that people don't see. The word Yideh, which we said is unique, instead of saying Yof, it says Yideh. Yud Daled Aleph Hey is 9/11. Because Daled and Hey is 9, and Yud and Aleph is 11. So the word Yideh is 9/11. It's telling you what happened 9/11. It's right there in front of you. Now, of course, that's just the beginning. If you read the pasuk, it says, Yisa Hashem alecha goy mirachak, miktzei haaretz, from the other end of the land, kasher Yideh HaNesher, like the eagle flies. Then the pasuk says, goy asher lo yisishma l'shoinai, a nation that you won't understand its tongue. Now, in the post 9/11 analysis, when they did a forensic, the CIA, Interpol, when they did a forensic, why they couldn't crack the cells that planned this, they found that there weren't enough cryptographers, code breakers, that spoke Arabic. And that's literally Goy Asher Lo Yisishma L'Shoina, a nation that you won't know their tongue. And then the pasuk goes on to continue to explain what kind of a people. Goy Az Ponim. people of ferocious chutzpah, asher lo yisa panim lazakin. They don't respect any elder statesman. We can't deal with these people. Diplomacy is useless. And what kind of people? V'nar lo yachain. People that have no mercy even on children. We saw that October 7th. They came in and they slaughtered men, women, and children. They slaughtered children in front of their parents. Mamish killed them cold-bloodedly. People that have no rachmanis even on children. Then the pasuk continues, V'heitzar lecha b'chol sharecha. They will cause you distress by all your gateways. That's exactly what happened in 9/11. I remember it like it was today. They shut down all the bridges and tunnels throughout the country. Those are the sharecha, those are the gateways. They also shut down all the airways, all air traffic. That's heitzar lecha b'chol sharecha. Now the pasuk continues, and it's really amazing. Adredes chimeisecha agvoyes ubesurois asher ata b'keteach b'hem b'chol artzecha. Until there came down your towers that are most high and fortified, that you trust in more than your entire land. So it's preferish in the pasuk, the twin towers. Our chomosecha, our towers that we were complete trust in, they came down. Now, it's interesting that in Eicher Rabasi, when we have a pasuk, this is what it means, that the Torah is given, the Torah becomes alive again and again. Now, before 9/11, what did this mean that the walls came down? So in Eicher Rabasi, it says that the captain of the host for the Romans, Nevuzradan, when he set siege on Yerushalayim, he noticed that every day the walls of Yerushalayim sank 2 finger breadths. It was a sign that God was showing that it was time for the Jews to lose the land and be destroyed. But now we see it means simple. Talmidim of Rav Miller remember that on the day that they unveiled the Twin Towers, Rav Miller made the statement, just like you see it go up, if Hashem wants it to come down, it'll come down. Words, says Chachamim are greater than Nevi'im. Now, I have some other things to say about this. The tragic downfall of Alexandria Mitzrayim, because the emperor said, look, on Tisha B'Av they fasted, and on Hanukkah, when I lost my daughter, they light candles. Rabbi Wein said he dedicated his life to history. He says that history, if we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to make the same mistakes again. Rapam said that when you light your menorah, don't open your window wide, your curtains wide. The guy who's struggling to make ends meet doesn't need to see your chandelier and your break front full of silver. Rapam learned from history. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have lit the menorah, but maybe they should have lit behind the windows. There is Persume Nisa de bias. You have to be concerned about the guy. I want to quote to you a word from the Friedrich Ger Rebbe. Zech Tzadik Levracha Schus Yagen Aleinu. There's a pasuk in this week's parasha in Vidui Meiser. The pasuk says, we all know the pasuk, it's in the Haggadah. Vayered Mitzrayim, we came down to Mitzrayim, Vayoger Sham, and we dwelled there b'misei ma'at, with very few people. We know that we were Shivim Nefesh. The Ger Rebbe says, technically, the correct chronology, chronological order would be to say Vayered Mitzrayim b'misei ma'at v'yoger sham. We came down to Mitzrayim with very few, and we dwelled there. So he quotes a interesting Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that two sages were walking together in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora, and one pointed out to the other a beautiful Beis HaKnesses in the diaspora. And the other one said to him, it says in Hosea, Perek Ches, Pasuk Yudalid, Vayishkach Yisrael es Oiseyu, Klal Yisrael forgot its creator, Vayiven Heicholos, and built palaces. He wasn't happy about the magnificent shul in Chutz La'aretz. Now, the Ger Rebbe said, what was displeasing about the magnificent palatial Beis HaKnesses? So the Ger Rebbe says, Lefi shebechutz la'aretz ein lahakim binyonei pe'er gedolim, shouldn't build magnificent edifices, magnificent palaces, ela lichyois ulanal chayim tznuim betimtzum. Rather, to live modest lives. And he says that's the meaning, vayogar sham b'misei ma'at, that they came down to Mitzrayim and they lived there in a modest way. Now, the Ger Rebbe is a very big chiddush, because if you would ask me, I would have thought that what the Navi didn't like is that we built magnificent palaces in the diaspora. It almost shows that we forget that we're in Galus. We're forgetting Hashem. And we forget that we're in exile. But the Ger Rebbe didn't say that. And I have a feeling that the Ger Rebbe said, even if you're going to argue, Klal Yisrael needs the pick-me-up of beautiful shuls. They need it. They need the incentive of having a magnificent place to go and daven and to go and learn. Klal Yisrael needs that good feeling, that pride, that Jewish pride. They need it. And that wouldn't mean that we would forget Hashem. But the Ger Rebbe said, but still there's a concern of the eyes of the envious, jealous eyes of the Goyim. And this is something that we have to be very concerned about. We build houses with swimming pools and tennis courts, houses with 10 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, sunrooms, surrounded by a fleet of fancy cars. We have to be careful. You have to be careful from the eyes of the Goyim. When the Goyim get jealous and envious, they get dangerous. That's what happened in Alexandria, Mitzrayim. To be careful, have to be at least cognizant of the eyes of the Goyim. We have to at least be aware of this. It's so blatant. When we go up, 500,000 Jews go up to the country, in the summer. Those that are on the eastern seaboard, tri-state, 500,000 Jews go up, and there's a collection of low-income goyim, and we come up and we build palatial developments, and we're driving fancy cars, and we build magnificent binyanim, and the guy looks at it and gnashes his teeth. Is there any wonder that we experience such anti-Semitism? We have to be cognizant of this. The answer isn't always easy. V'ro kol am haaretz, ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoreh mimeka. This pasuk is said about the Tefillin Shel Rosh, that the nations will see that Hashem's name is called upon you, and they'll fear from you. The words Shem Hashem Nikra, Shem Hashem, and of course Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Shem Hashem Nikra is Rosh Teva Shin Yud Nun. And because Shem is Shin, Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei, so that's Yud, and Nikra is Nun. Shin Yud Nun spells the letter Shin, because we have embedded on the Tefillin Shel Rosh the letter Shin. Rabbeinu Ephraim tells us that why is there a Shin? Because that's the amount of days that we put on Tefillin in a year. In a year of 365 days, a solar year, we put on Tefillin 300 days. The great Yam Shel Shlomo, we spoke about him, the Marshal in the previous shir, if I remember, I told you the story about the Marshal bringing back a Talmud alive. He got out of his grave with his tachrichin, and then the Marshal also davened that everybody should forget that it happened. And that same Marshal, in his Sefer Yam Shel Shlomo, he says that this drasha about Shin is a proof that you should put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. Because he says if you count the 52 Shabbos and the 13 days of Yom Tov, the remaining 300 days when you put on Tefillin include Chol Hamoed. That's Marshal's proof to put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. Of course, a great majority of Klal Yisrael doesn't put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. I don't put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. Follow the minhag of my father. Ramosha did to put on Tefillin. But in this I follow the minhag of my father, and I don't put on Tefillin. So it's interesting that there's a story about two great Talmidei Chacham. When we're talking about the greatest of the great. They were sitting and debating. The Pri Megadim, who holds that you don't put on Tefillin, the Pri Megadim who holds that you put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed, was debating the great Ateres Tzvi of Zidichov, who says that you don't put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. Most Hasidim don't put on Tefillin on Chol Hamoed. So the Rebbe said, if you're bringing Ramazim, I'll tell you a Remez. It's really amazing. How do we know that you don't put on Tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So that's from a pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'samtem es hachuka azos," this statute of Tefillin, you put on l'moada miyomim yomima, from day to day. So the Gemara says, Yomim is Yomim v'loy leilos. We don't put it on in the night. Miyomim is we put it on some days and not Shabbos and Yom Tov. Says the Heilige Zidichova, if you take the gematria of Esachuka Azais L'moyada Miyamim Yamima, you know me, I check everything out. The gematria of Esachuka Azais L'moyada Miyamim Yamima is exactly 1332. Now I just want to tell you that you have to spell Hachuka the way it is in the Torah without a vav. Actually, the Sefer that brings down this gematria got it wrong. They have a chukah with a vav, but that's wrong. then the gematria doesn't come out. It's chukah, it's ha-chukah without a vav. It's 1332. Now the Zohar holds you don't put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. The Zohar says, maniach tefillin b'Chol HaMoed chayav misa. You want to put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed, you chayav misa. Maniach tefillin b'Chol HaMoed chayav misa is exactly the gematria 1332. You can't make these things up. You just can't make them up. Don't start up with great people. This week's parsha, it says, Baruch ata b'vayecha, u'baruch ata b'tzeisecha. Should be blessed when you come in, and blessed when you leave. So the Gemara in Bava Metzia on Daf Kuf Zayin says that this means that just like we come into this world without sin, so we should leave this world without sin. That's our goal. Of course, Ein Tzadik Ba'aretz Asher Yasa Tov V'Lo Yechata, but it means all our days should be with tshuva, so that when we leave this world, it should also be without sin. Now, Talmidei Chachamim know that one of the great commentators of Shas, which is in the back of the Gemara, is the Rishash. A lot of times we said in yeshiva, when we experienced the difficulty, we said, let's look in the back, let's look in the Rishash. So the Rishash, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Schusa Yagan Aleinu, in his terse way, says that from this pasuk and this Gemara in Bava Metzia, Mikan stira ksas lebale das hagilgal. This is a little bit of a contradiction to those that espouse reincarnation. Because the whole idea of reincarnation is that a person comes back to correct previous sins. But here it says, Baruch ata b'vayecha, you come into the world without sins. So he says this is a little bit of a contradiction to those that espouse Gilgal. Now, first of all, the acceptance of Gilgal is today considered already almost a given. The Zohar mentions Gilgal multiple times. The Arizal, the Gra and Evan Shloima, all espouse Gilgal. Happens to be that Rav Sadia Gaon didn't hold of Gilgal. But he was a very, very big minority. The acceptance of Gilgal became like a worldwide obvious thing. If the Olam remembers when young Leiby Kletsky was mutilated, Reb Chaim Kanievsky at that time wrote a short letter to the world that this event could only be understood with Teres HaGilgal. So it became normative belief in the Torah of Gilgal. Now, I said this in the past, that Rav Miller never mentioned Gilgal. When he was asked to talk about it, he said in the Q&A that since it's not mentioned anywhere in Shas, he doesn't talk about it. And then subsequently, after his passing, the family put out some statements of Rav Miller, and one of them is that he added that he didn't talk about Gilgal because he never heard it mentioned from his Rebbeim in Sabatka. But now Gilgal became normative Yiddishkeit. And it became necessary for people to cope. when they see somebody suffer terribly who's a righteous person, if they could understand that the person is suffering because to be misaken something in a previous Gilgal, or when the Zayir says, Eila mishpatim asher tosim lefneim, zu teiras hagilgal. You know, we know that we have to bring our judgment to a good Jewish court. The problem is what happens when you have a dispute with somebody and you know that the other person did something underhanded. You know it. And it says that the Hashem is in the Jewish court, Eli, him nitzav badas hem, and the court rules against you. What do you do with that? So the Zayir says, Eila mishpatim asher tasim lefneim doi saida de gilgula. The way to understand it is that you owe this person something in a different Gilgal. And that's the way to understand why the court would rule against you, even though it's an Erlich court governing according to the laws of Hashem. Now, if you notice, the Rishash says it's only a stira ktsas, a little bit. Because I think that even the Rishash entertained the understanding that it's possible that we come back to correct a sin of a previous Gilgal, but when we start with a clean slate. We don't start with a dirty slate. We're coming back because our neshama has a stain from a previous Gilgal. But when we come from the womb out again, it's a fresh start with a clean slate. I'll give an example. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Mefarshim say that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgal of Noach. I mean, the truth of the matter is he was also a Gilgal of Hevel, but it was a Gilgal of Noach. So he had to correct Noach. Noach made a mistake. What was Noach's mistake? That he didn't pray enough for his generation. It says that he was mispal afterwards, and he offered kabbanas afterwards. That he should have prayed beforehand. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to fix that. So when we sinned with the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu understood that he had to pray for Klal Yisrael, and he said, forgive them, if not, mecheni na mesifrecha, erase me from your sefer. In other words, he gave himself all to pray, to be mesaken the chet of Noach. And that's why the Chidah says the amazing thing, mecheni na, if you rearrange the letters of mecheni na, it spells minoyach ani. It's amazing. Mecheni na is minoyach ani. You rearrange the letters. So Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgal, but that doesn't mean when he was born he was stained. It says that when he was born, Kalabayis Maliyara, the whole house filled with light. And it says that Teira say Kitaivu, he was perfectly good. So he could come to be Misak and Noach, but he come out this time with a clean slate. It's interesting that just one more point about Gilgal. One of the earliest mentions of Gilgal is in the Sefer HaBohir. The Sefer HaBohir is assumed to have been written by Reb Nechuni ben Akana over 1,200 years ago. Reb Nechuni ben Akana says that the idea of Gilgal is the root of Yibum. That the brother marries, this we don't do this anymore today, but the brother marries the dead brother's wife, and the boy that's born is called Al Shem Hames. The boy that's born is called by the name of the dead person. That's an idea of Gilgal. That's what the Sefer HaBohir says. V'haya ki savoya la'aretz, when you enter the land, I made a bracha already, Rabbi said. There's an interesting Balaturim. The Balaturim says that Savai, Tov Vez Vav Aleph, is the same letters as Avos. So says the Eitzah applies, V'haya, the Gemara says in Mesechus Megillah, Ein V'haya Ela Lashon Simcha. V'haya means joy. V'haya, when you're going to make a simcha, like the wedding of a child. Ki savai, as the Zohar says, the avos come back from the next world and come to the chuppah of their descendants. That's v'haya, when there's a simcha, ki savai is avos. The avos come. Now the Zohar brings a raya to this from the pasuk that says, Yismach Yisrael ba'osav. Yisrael rejoices ba'osav, with their makers. So the Zohar says, it should say, Yismach Yisrael ba'osai. That Klal Yisrael rejoices with its maker, God. Why does it say ba'osav in the plural? So the Zohar says, because by a simcha, the parents come from the next world to enjoy the simcha. You should know that it's brought down in Sifrei Chabad, it's brought down in the Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah, Yismach Leiv, the Mishnah Halachos, that there's actually a minig to bring an invitation to the cemetery. We do that. Bring an invitation to the cemetery. In certain places, there's a minig to make under the chuppah a kel malei. Kel malei is the traditional psalm that we say for the dead. The psalm, the prayer that we say for the dead. Now, most don't do it because it makes the chasana too somber. Kel malei is a very sad thing. So most don't do it. But it is a minig tells. Minig tells is to say if there's a parent missing, so by the chuppah acknowledging that they come from the next world, they say kel malei. But this is a fact that the parents come back for the simcha of their descendants. Pasuk says, "Uvou alecha kol habracha se'ela v'hisigucha." The pasuk says about blessings, and the blessings will come and overtake you. Ki sishma b'kel Hashem Elokecha, when you listen to Hashem your God. So the question is, when it says v'hisigucha, they will catch up to you, they will overtake you, the implication is that you're running away from them. Who runs away from blessings? It's a big question. What does the pasuk mean? They will overtake you. Don't we greet blessings with open hands? And the answer is not always. Sometimes life's biggest blessings we don't realize. But if we're supposed to have them, then we'll have them even if they have to overtake us. Ach toiv v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayei, David HaMelech says. Good and kindness will chase me. This pasuk I saw in my lifetime. When I remarried, I went to a bungalow colony, which I was there for 20 years. And we got to with my Rebbetzin, new Rebbetzin, we got to the bungalow, and my Rebbetzin told me it's hard to be where I was with my first Rebbetzin in such close quarters. I remember how jarring it was to me. But we ended up getting a beautiful summer cottage where I was able to have 2 families in 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, where I give much bigger shiurim than I ever gave. But I remember that it wasn't easy. I didn't realize that the good had to overtake me. The same thing is true when I left Staten Island. After 38 years being a Rav, when you're in a community, a Rav, 38 years, anything else, especially a person that's not used to change, is very daunting. But the kindness of being with all our children in Lakewood, with a beautiful shul in Fairways Lakewood, the kindness had to overtake me. It comes upon you and it overtakes you. That's the chesed of Hashem. If Hashem wants to do, He'll make it that it should overtake you. The pasuk says, "Tachas asher lo yavarta es Hashem elikecha b'simcha, da'avo alecha kol klolos," because you didn't serve Hashem with simcha. Simcha Bonim Peshischa says that it's not likely we should be cursed because we didn't do things with simcha. Okay, it's preferable to do it with simcha, but if you do everything right, just you're lacking simcha, that would not be a reason that it should have klalos. So he has a very interesting way of looking at this pasuk. He says, "Tachas asher le'avarta es Hashem elikecha b'simcha," because when you are in situations where you have a reason not to serve Hashem, you're happy. Oh, that's no good. There's COVID, and you can't go to shul for a month. You're happy that you don't have to go to shul. That's no good. That's no good. If you have a reason why you can't go to the shir and you're happy, got getting out of the house tonight. Don't be happy when you can't do a mitzvah. That's a very bad thing. U'nasoncha Hashem l'roish v'lo l'zanav. Hashem will make you for a head and not a tail. As we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Vav, Haba Aleinu L'Teva, we know that one of the rituals that we do on the night of Rosh Hashanah is we take the head of the fish and we say a Yiratzon. First, we say that we should be yifra b'yir b'kedagim, we should be fruitful and multiply like fish. And then we say, sheniya l'roish v'loi l'zanav. Should be for a head and not a tail. So the Tiva Parsha asks a very simple question. Since we're talking about humans, it should say, sheniya l'roish v'loi l'akev. We should be a head and not a heel. Not a tail. We don't have tails. Why do we say Sheniya l'Roish v'lo l'zanav? It's such an obvious question. Why do we say that it should be for a head and not a tail? It should be a head and not a heel. What tail? We're not animals. We don't have tails. Vashti had a tail. We don't have tails. So I'm going to answer this with a word from the from the Rebbe from Jidkov. It's different than Zidikov. Rebbe Eliezer. The Rebbe says, what does L'Roish stand for? L'Rosh is an acronym, L'Asais Ritzayin Avinu Shebeshamayim. Mamad Reish Aleph Shin is L'Asais Ritzayin Avinu Shebeshamayim. When we say V'Shania L'Rosh B'Lei L'Zanav, what we're davening is what should lead us. What should lead us is the desire to do the will of Hashem. L'Rosh is L'Asais Ritzayin Avinu Shebeshamayim. What does Hashem want from me at this moment? We shouldn't be led by our nefesh habahamis, by our animalistic pursuits. That's the zanav. Shenia l'roish v'lo l'zanav. What's driving the bus? What's leading us? Is it to do the will of Hashem? Or is it the next latte and steak and sleep and fun? What's leading the bus? And that's what we daven, Shenia l'roish v'lo l'zanav. Now, before we get caught by the clock, I have some things to talk to you about. There's a big opportunity coming up next week. On Monday, the Daf Yomi Global Community is finishing Seder Nezikin. With the completion of Masechtas Horyas, we finished the entire Seder Nezikin, which was a long journey, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Basra, Sanhedrin, a lot of Masechtas, a lot of Shvuas, a lot of different, a lot of difficult Masechtas. On Tuesday, the global community starts Seder Kachim. This is, and I'm talking to all, I hope you feel the Dvarim Shebelev. I hope, because it says, Dvarim HaYotzim min halev nichnasim lelev. Things that come from the heart enter the heart. This is a life-changing opportunity. You know, thousands of people start the Daf Yomi after the Siyum in MetLife Stadium. They get a tremendous hisayrus. But why wait till then? Seder Kachim, many people never learned Seder Kachim. The Chavetz Chaim would say, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, Schus Yagen Aleinu. Chavetz Chaim would say that we are in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the times of Mashiach. We're already hearing the footsteps of Mashiach. He says, it shows a belief when people learn Kachim, and they're getting ready for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. It's such an opportunity now. Why should you come to MetLife Stadium as a beginner? You start now, you'll have a big chelik of Shas already. If you never learned, or you didn't learn for a long time, Zvachim, Menachos, Chulin, all of these Masechtas, it's a glorious opportunity to join. And listen, what better thing, we come to Rosh Hashanah, we all ask Hashem for a better year. So Hashem says, okay, but tell me, what are you going to do better? Person that says, you know what, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to learn a blot a day. And today, people don't have to be afraid. How could I do it? One night I'm busy with PTA, and one night I'm busy with my children before a test, and one night I have a date night with my wife. Today, if you can't make a share in the night, today you have so many options. First of all, in my case, you could listen to it on Torah Anytime, on YouTube, on Kalalashin, but there are other people much greater than me. You could hear Rabbi Stefanski, Rabbi Borenstein, Clear Daf. There's so many different places to hear the Daf and to make it up. And how many good 7.5 years do you have left? Do we have left? It should be many. But it's such an opportunity this Tuesday. Talk to a friend, talk to a Talmud, talk to a child, talk to a brother. Here, we learn 2 blat Motzei Shabbos. This Motzei Shabbos, I think it's at 10 o'clock. And then during the week, it's a very civilized 8 o'clock. You could come on by going to zoomdaf.com, just upload Zoom, and then go to zoomdaf.com and put in meeting code RMMW, Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss, all in capitals. Since I already interrupted, I should mention that if you want to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, 718-916-3100, RMMWSI at AOL.com. I'm going to say a Rabbeinu Yoina, which is scary. We're going to end with this Rabbeinu Yoina. It's a frightening Rabbeinu Yoina, but it has to be said. In the curses, we know by Har Grizim and Har Evel, we heard a selection of curses and a selection of blessings. One of the curses is Oreh Makla Aviv V'imai. Cursed is a person who takes his father and his mother lightly. The Rabbeinu Yoina says that this includes siblings that hate each other. Siblings that hate each other generates great pain to parents, even in the next world, and is included in Oreh Makla Aviv V'imai. Unfortunately, there is such a thing as sibling rivalry. And there's sisters, there's brothers that don't get along. Sisters and brothers that don't get along cause tremendous pain to parents, even in the next world. And Rabbeinu Yoina says it's a transgression of this curse. Now this Rabbeinu Yoina, which I was unaware of, this Rabbeinu Yoina is reminiscent of the famous ethical will of Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch. The great Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch wrote an ethical will to his children. He wrote it on the occasion of the death of his wife, Lo Yaleinu. Now, if you want, you could surely Google it, and it's worth reading it in its entirety. But he writes, for those that are not familiar with an ethical will, this isn't who gets the silver and who gets the linen and who gets the mink. That's not what an ethical will is. An ethical will is the device from experience that a parent writes down for their descendants. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch left a very eloquent ethical will. He wrote to his children that with the death of your mother, Lo Yaleinu, I begin to think of my own mortality. He says, what could I ask from you? That you should follow in the ways of Hashem? It would be an insult. You give me no reason to think that you don't do this. He says, one thing I could ask you. When invariably one of you will hurt the other, which happens during the vicissitudes of time, I beg you to forgive and forget. Because how could Mommy and I live in the next world if our children are not one with each other? You should know, when we will see our children living in harmony, that will give us great nachas in the next world. And this is exactly what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Parents that see children not getting along, it's like a knife in them. And that's included in the curse of Aram Makla Aviv V'imai. Cursed is one who takes a father or a mother lightly. As always, I want to thank you for joining me for this share, and to wish everybody to have productive Elul, busy with tshuva, improvements, like the shofar that we hear every morning reminds us, Shapru Maseichem, make prettier your ways. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and a good Shabbos.